Yes.
Good evening, everyone. I welcome you to the seventh webinar by Curious for Law. Today, we have with us Ms. Soumya Singh and Mr. Sumit Lal, who will have a conversation with us on career in taxation, practice, and scope. Both Soumya ma'am and Sumit sir work at the chamber of Mr. Salil Kapoor and have the knowledge of taxation industry, which is both current and relevant. I welcome you, Sumit sir and Soumya ma'am.
Thank you.
Now, in my opinion, it is always better in a webinar that the moderator speaks as less as possible and resource person speaks as much as possible. So without taking much time, I would like to invite Soumya ma'am to give us a brief introduction to the topic and her journey in taxation industry.
Yeah. Thank you, Tanmay. Thank you for the introduction. So good evening, everybody. The idea of this webinar is basically to introduce you to the practice of taxation. And I think in my career so far, also during my own student life, we all have had few preconceived notions about this subject and the practice that is there regarding the taxation laws. So today, Sumit Lal Chandani is my colleague at work, and I will try to make an endeavor to clarify some of your doubts and also to shed some light on what the practice is like and what do we exactly do. All right. So before we begin, there is just one small clarification that I would do that, like I said, that there are few notions in our head that CAs do this kind of work. What does a taxation lawyer do? So let me tell you, my colleague will shed more light on the fact that how our job is different than that of a CA. But let me just tell you that our domains are very different and we do not really intersect each other. And even in taxation, there is in fact a lot more scope for interpretation, and that's what we generally tend to do. All right. And also, there's another thing that students usually have in their mind that you do have to do a lot of calculations. Uh, like if I go back to in my college life, while we were being taught taxation, uh, uh, we were made to do a lot of computation of income, those sort of things. But I just want to say that taxation laws are just not limited to those computations that you probably do in college. And there are a lot more things, the basics of taxations, the interpretation, uh, the, the various domains that I'll be trying to explain as much as possible in this much of time. All right. Uh, so yeah, to begin with, I will first of all, though I got to know that probably majorly all the majority of students here are from third year, but I will first start with what are the career opportunities after you graduate in taxation. All right. So like in any other field, even in taxation, you can broadly divide it into two. One would be advisory, the other would be the litigation, right? In advisory, what you majorly do is you advise your clients as to how they should do their tax planning so as to reduce their tax liability, because nobody wants to pay a lot of taxes, right? And in litigation, once there is a dispute regarding taxability of an income, uh, that's when the litigation, the role of the lawyers comes into picture, right? Uh, so moving on to where on can you, I mean, what are the opportunities once you graduate in law school? Uh, One, of course, the law firms. There are law firms which have dedicated teams which look into taxation. Two, there are chambers like the one I am working at. We also dedicatedly do this taxation, litigation, and advisory both. Then thirdly, there are big fours like Ernst& Young, KPMG, Deloitte, PwC. They also, of course, they are majorly the chartered accountancy firms, but they do all variety of work. So they also do have lawyers who help them in litigation too. And then there are corporates which also look up to hiring taxation advocates who can advise them on their taxation transactions relating to tax. Then, of course, there are financial institutions like RBI also, which also happen to hire taxation lawyers specifically, those who have some sort of experience. So this is the brief uh, areas where one can enter after graduating. At few places, you do require some prior experience, and at few places, you can start afresh. Okay. Now talking about which are what kind of dispute does arise in a taxation litigation. For this, I will take an example of a very recent case of 2018. It was a case of an actress, Sushmita Sen, the very popular actress. She had received some amount of compensation from a company which had done some damage to her reputation. Now, the question therein involved was whether that receipt of income, whether that receipt of money would be income and liable to tax. So those are the kind of interpretations. That's when you read upon the provisions of law and apply the law and then reach a conclusion that whether or not it should be taxed, right? So that's briefly the idea of dispute. Though that's a very generic and very simple one, it does get complicated at times. But right now, we are not going to teach you about the taxation principles or anything. So I'm just going to give you an overview. Okay. Now, as regards the two branches of taxation that I told you, direct and indirect. In direct taxation, there is income tax, for which there is a dedicated statute which is called Income Tax Act of 1961. It is accompanied by income tax rules. Then there are notifications which are issued by the Revenue Department, which comes under Ministry of Finance. Yearly, there is Finance Act, which is passed each year and which amends the Income Tax Act yearly and brings upon major changes, right? And similarly, for indirect taxes also, there is now Goods and Services Tax Act, which came into effect only in 2017. So it's a new area of law. A lot of litigation keeps happening because the implementation is not so smooth, and people keep approaching the courts for some improper implementation that the authorities do. So that's the idea of the statutes that are involved in both these laws. Okay, now as regards the practice, moving on to the forums that as a lawyer we appear before. Firstly, I'll take up income tax. Okay, now in income tax, like I said, I gave you the example of Sushmita Sen's receipt of compensation. Now the dispute arises, the very origin is from the level of an assessing officer. There's an authority under law which is called an assessing officer, from where the dispute arises. All right. So against that, an appeal lies to Commissioner of Income Tax Appeals, and from there on, an appeal lies to Income Tax Appellate Tribunal. Now, this Income Tax Appellate Tribunal is a dedicated tribunal for resolution of income tax cases only. It is set up under the Income Tax Act. It has its own governing rules, all right, which are different from those governing the other civil courts. And then an appeal lies to the High Court and the Supreme Court. Now, on what questions, on what facts these lie, I will not get into that because it will just be too elaborate. So these are the 5 basic authorities before which we tend to appear in an income tax litigation. There are 3 other authorities. There is Authority for Advance Ruling, there is Dispute Resolution Panel, there is Income Tax Settlement Commission. These 3 are also there before which a taxpayer makes an application and the lawyers represent them. Moving to indirect tax, that is now the regime of GST, there is an adjudicating authority, which you can take as income, like the assessing officer in case of income tax. Then an appeal from the adjudicating authority lies to the first appellate authority. And then similarly, there is a GST tribunal, and then of course the High Court and the Supreme Court. So this is an overall idea of what are the forums in tax litigation. So I think that's pretty much of an overview. Regarding the taxation law, I just want to say before we take up the specific questions, and then we would know what exactly are your doubts. But before we get into that, I just want to say that while we were in college, and the way I had read it was probably, I mean, I should have done more. That's what I felt after the law school. In college, you may not be taught so much, but you have to make an endeavor you have to put in your own effort to make sure that you know the basics. It's okay, the act is very lengthy, very long, and I don't think it is expected out of you to know each and every section. And frankly speaking, even today, if you just randomly pick up any section and tell me on which I have not really worked, I may not be able to answer it also. But the basics should be clear, so that as and when it's required that you read a section, and if you know the basics, you will be able to apply your mind the principles of basic principles, and then for get to a logical conclusion. All right. So I just want to say that do not limit yourself in law school only to what is being taught in the classroom, because I'll tell you, Income Tax Act is so lengthy and enormous that I don't think it can be planned very effectively, or even if it can be, it wasn't planned at the time I was in college. All right. So I'm just trying to emphasize on the point that put in your own personal effort, try to read the basics. Do not worry that, oh my God, I can't cover this whole entire lengthy set of book. Don't worry about that. Just try to read the basics, so that in future, whenever you come across any situation where an issue regarding income tax is there, your basics are clear and you can apply the law. All right. Now, I think I'll hand over it to Sumit so that he can shed some light on whatever basic points he would want to mention before we take up the questions. Sumit, do we have?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sumit Lalchandani. I'm litigator. I'm practicing tax law since last 5 years. So I hope everybody is doing well during this COVID time. Well, I'm a litigator. My main task as being a litigator lawyer is to convince judge and sometimes convince client. However, the intent to conduct this seminar today is not to convince you guys to practice a tax law specifically, but the intent of today webinar is just an endeavor to convince you guys that tax is not a difficult subject to understand, but just a technical one, which require little bit of more regular reading and more of an interpretation skill. Also, during the course of a webinar, our main attempt is to give the brief background and the scope of practice of taxation. I'll start with the great words of Nani Palkhiwala. Success to a large extent depends upon being at the right place and the right time. Sometimes it happens by chance and sometimes it happens by choice. It's always to be on a better choice if you accept something by a matter of choice. So there's a lot of presumption while you are in law college, whether a taxation is something wherein a commerce background student has an edge, whether an economics graduate or you require something code accounting competence or understanding before you enter the legal profession. So I'll just relate it to a fact. There are not many subjects which I actually taught to you in law colleges. But eventually when you enter into the market, there might be n number of cases or law subject which you have specifically not been taught in law college, or even you might not be aware while you were during your law school. For example, there might be a situation, there are some new enactment which have been taking place after you graduate from law school. So a preconceived notion that while you are in law college, you should be well versed with each and every proposition, each and every section of a tax is something which I do not agree with. So legal profession is something while you learn, while you enter into the profession, the process of learning goes ever and ever, and everybody is a learner in that particular field. Specifically, tax law is something which, though vast enough, is technical subject, but is not something which is difficult. So one needs to appreciate the fact that once you enter into the field of the profession, it's always a good time. So the question which generally arises, what are the determining factor which one should keep in mind while entering the field of direct taxation? So see, Income Tax Act is itself a big act, which is again divided into several sections. And divisions are per se, assuming it might be a domestic taxation, international taxation, and transfer pricing. We assuming are specializing something which is known as tax. then again super specializing to an extent that we are only dealing in income tax. And again, a third category of specialization would again be developed if you are limiting yourself, assuming to transfer pricing or international tax or domestic taxation. So point which I'm saying, even the Income Tax Act is divided into many fronts, such as many sections would be something which relate to the procedure norms which have to be followed regarding the filing of appeals, regarding how the documentation has to be done. However, the main computation part, which relates how your income has to be computed, is something which is limited to 475 sections of the act. So understanding a few sections while you're in law college and eventually developing it while you enter into the profession can be a good illustration in determining whether tax is meant for you or not. Also, one more thing, like assuming a fact, if you intend to enter into a tax profession, and that is the reason that you should be well versed with the topics of tax, is something which I again do not agree with. I believe that even if one is not willing to enter the expert field of tax, one should not neglect it completely. India is a front runner when it comes to aggressive tax jurisdiction. Newspaper makes headlines almost every week with some other tax policy or decision which comes into the volatile nature of the subject of India. Tax experience help in understanding the working of business and reason behind how the commercial decisions are to be taken place. Once you graduate from the law college, even assuming if you're not into a taxation law, of course, the income or the professional fee which you might be earning, or someone you will be advising to, or someone who is into business, according to me, tax is a subject which could be understood and should be understood to an extent that one has a prima facie understanding how to deal with the taxation principle generally. So before you enter into a tax field, a deciding factor is if you are well versed with the basic concept or the principle of taxation, not the whole act, but the basic principle of taxation can be eventually a deciding factor whether to enter or not. Again, one should always remember, it's hard to climb the tree, but once you climb it, it's very easy to have cherry. That's on the work front. Never think of the fact that income tax is something boring a lot. Now, coming to the main task, which I believe is a task of an advocate, is an interpretation work. So tax laws are supposed to be very strictly interpreted. The normal principles of interpretation of law involve several functions of law of interpretation, such as purposive interpretation, which means that law has to be interpreted in a manner or for the purpose for which the intent of a law drafter was, so as to avoid any mischief of any law. The concept of harmonious interpretation of law, the reasonable construction, or many others concept of interpretation. However, there are two basic exceptions to all these principles of interpretation. That is doctrine of strict interpretation. So there are two basic exceptions to all the principles of interpretation. That is taxation law and the criminal law. In criminal law, either you have committed an offense or you have not committed an offense. Either your action falls within the parameter of an offense or it does not fall within the parameters of an offense. The law cannot be stretched. Similarly, is a taxation law. You have to read the statute, and after you read the statute, even the tax is payable or not payable. It's white or black. There are no gray areas in the taxation law, and therefore laws are to be very, very strictly constituted when it comes to the taxation law. The simple principle of taxation is, even though the taxation is a very noble profession that enables us, the state, to carry out its welfare activities, the development activities, the citizen cannot be unfair with the taxes, so that tax which are payable are certainly payable and taxes which are not payable can never be levied upon. Like just an example of Article 265, there cannot be a concept of unjust enrichment against the taxpayer. Nobody can come up and say on the ground of compassion, exempt me or liberate me from the responsibility of paying the taxes. There's no place of compassion in income tax. Also, at the same time, the plea that states need more money and therefore taxation should be liberally constituted in favor of the state is also not a plea which is available, and is for a reason that those who framed the law at that time, certainly the British era, who believed in something of certainty and law and a concept of institution, established a famous institution known as Income Tax Appellate Tribunal in the British era. And it was in 1941, the concept of tribunalization was first introduced in Indian legal system. So before, like currently we are in 1961 era, and all the enactments or the budget which have been introduced consequent to the enactment of a new Income Tax Act, which came into enactment in 1961. So before that, there was an Income Tax Act 1922, which was in British era. It was in pursuant to the power conferred under the 1922 Act that Income Tax Appellate Tribunal was established in 1941. So the idea of establishing a tribunal was itself a task, because it took away the important tax matter which were before the High Court. Before 1941, any matter, be that it may company matter, income tax matter, there were no concept of tribunal. So the concept of tribunal came into existence in 1941, and it was a very renowned jury, Justice Munir, whose name you'll always come across when you enter the field of taxation. This gentleman later became the Chief Justice of Pakistan. So he was the main person whose effort made an successful concept of tribunalization. So while the tribunal was established, that is the reason it is known as the mother of all the tribunal. The establishment of income tax tribunal was a path which would determine in future whether the concept of other tribunal will come into scene or not. So eventually, after almost 80 years of the establishment of tribunal, we have seen the success of how tribunal are functioning. Also, before like the existence of tribunal, the tax matters specifically were dealt by someone who only had a law background. For instance, in High Court, all the judges have a law background. The roster which is decided wherein a specific tax bench is dedicated to judges who deals in taxation. However, there was a thought process which actually lead to a establishment of tribunal. And in tribunal, it's not only a judicial mind which is into existence. However, it is a mixed cocktail of both the judicial mind and a technical mind. Judicial can be someone who is a lawyer practicing into taxation work and has been elevated as a member of tribunal. And the second category would be a technical member who is a chartered accountant or someone specialized in the field of taxation, apart from being a lawyer, after the following the due process of appointment is being appointed as a member of tribunal. So see, while you decide the factor whether to enter into the field of taxation or not, I'll suggest everybody, like while you are in law college, even though if you have graduated and you are yet to decide the field of law which you want to venture upon, I'll suggest just start reading commentary. Like you will have the best possible commentary in the market on the tax laws. Just start reading the case law. The habit, I'm told that most of the participants here are from third year, fourth year. The habit of reading a single case law a day. A single case law a day can eventually change your concept of understanding, concept of how to logically think something. And just imagine a situation. If you start reading case law, one case law per day, like the amount of immense knowledge you will have once you graduate. And like you go to High Court website, Delhi High Court website, like it's been wonderfully designed in a manner, like you can specifically choose a subject, a tax subject, and just see the judgments which have been uploaded on a specific day. And once you start reading the case law, you will eventually feel that that subject is specifically meant for you or not meant for you. So the idea of today lecture being that you should have a basic understanding of what the tax subject is can eventually be resolved out by reading case law eventually. So there are various tax treaty which India enters into almost in last 20 years. There are more than 200 tax treaties which India has entered into. There are amendment. There are union budget which has been introduced, which are always introduced in Parliament every year. So this is the most interesting aspect where the lawyers come into scene through the idea of union budget. So I'll tell you, through union budget, there are major enactment in the Income Tax Act. Last year only there were 106 enactment, which almost were to an extent that they were bizarre in nature. To an extent, they took away some important powers of a tribunal or the concept of introducing equalization levy. So most of them are being challenged in the court of law. The constitutional validity of the same are challenged in the court of law. So if you see any other law and compare ratio wise the constitutional validity of any act being challenged in High Court, you will see the Income Tax Act being at the threshold level number 1. The reason is the introduction of a union budget on a regular year wise. Though the question might be different, you are successful, you are not successful, but the idea of your constitutional knowledge coming into scene and the idea which or the preconceived notion of some of the undergraduate, what is actually the task of lawyer in the field of taxation. Here comes task. So there are regular notification circular which are introduced along with the Finance Act. So the main idea, if you start reading these circular notification, starting like before you graduate from the law college, it can give you a fair idea whether a tax as a subject is meant for you or not. So here the game does not end like reading only these all factor, how the foreign jurisdiction are evolving in the matter of taxation, how is OECD commenting upon or developing day by day and commenting on each and every aspect of taxation. Write something on taxation, get it published, prepare an argument, prepare a logic, and eventually one can decide what are the basic need or a prerequisite once a person required to decide a factor to enter the field of taxation or not. Also, if you think you are someone who like numbers, like for me, I belong to a business family. So while I completed my schooling, I was not too sure of the fact what to do. So eventually, once I decided the fact that law is something which I should try for, during my law college, I interned in few places which specialize in taxation law. So there I got the interest of trying and making an attempt to enter into the field of taxation. So I'll advise if you make an attempt to venture, whether one should go for taxation, internship in the field of taxation is something which I'll suggest for. And also, if you, assuming a fact, if you are in court and you want to explore something new, I'll just recommend you to just go to the tax courtroom in the High Court and given an opportunity before ITAT. There are dedicated benches which specifically deals in taxation matter. So once you are in the courtroom, or assuming that can eventually help you in deciding the factor. And once you are in courtroom, you make a habit of listening to judges, the lawyers, making notes accordingly, and you accordingly make your sense of giving an advisory there too. So that's all as of now. I'll hand over to Tanmay to ask question if they think there are.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Soumya ma'am and Sumit sir, for such a perceptive overview of taxation. Now, before we move on to ask questions, I have a few quick announcements to make. I would request everyone to stay on mute. And if anyone has any question, they can send it in the chat box. or wait till the end when you can ask questions verbally. We will circulate a link towards the end of the webinar. You have to fill that form for getting the certificate of participation for this webinar. Also, Soumya ma'am and Sumit sir, all the questions that we address today are for both of you, and either of you or both of you can answer the questions. So if you allow me to proceed with the questions.
Sure.
Yes, go ahead.
So now, before we take up other questions, as Soumya ma'am also mentioned that the field of chartered accountant and a taxation lawyer is very different. So I would like to ask from you, what is the differentiation between the job of a chartered accountant and that of a lawyer engaged in the taxation field? So what exactly is the difference between the job performed by these two jobs?
Sure.
Okay, I'll make an attempt to answer this one. So I believe chartered accountant are more meticulous and a lawyer are more dynamic in their field. The chartered accountant do their accounting part of it and lawyer do their interpretation part of it. There's a proper demarcation of a work which a chartered accountant is required to do, which an accountant or let's say a lawyer is required to do. There's no dispute in this regard. So when it comes to the practice or the forum in which one specializes in, the chartered accountant can practice till income tax appellate tribunal and law starting from assessing officer, CIT, and there are forums like DRP. These are the forums which are the Collegium of Commissioner of Appeal. There are TPO, transfer pricing officer, wherein if you enter into an international transaction, there might be a situation that assessing officer, because of a specific knowledge of transfer pricing officer, refer matter to him. So these are some jurisdiction wherein a chartered accountant can specifically argue the matter. However, when it comes to lawyer, of course, lawyer can argue the matter starting from assessing officer to Supreme Court. However, one should remember, assuming I'll tell you a situation of a family doctor. If there's something wrong, assuming the first part which you will do is consult a family doctor. In the same way, a person who is filing a return of income is someone, some person who is acting as a family doctor. And assuming if your case is selected for the scrutiny, you will eventually go to a chartered accountant and who will solve your query and answer or give clarification in that regard too. So though there are some lawyers who also go to assessing officer, but the main task or the domain of establishing facts and making something legal is with a chartered accountant. However, when there is some jurisdiction error in the notice which has been issued by assessing officer, there's principle of natural justice which has been violated, or something like bizarre done by assessing officer which has actually no answer, and you think if I go to an appellate forum will be too disastrous and would be time consuming process, then you approach writ petition, and for which lawyers are engaged for. So there's a demarcation. When it comes to filing of return of income, of course, chartered accountants are someone who specialize in accountancy part and they are meant to file the return of income. However, there's no embargo on the lawyer that they cannot file. I know some of them lawyers who file their return of income, but the main domain when it comes to it is with chartered accountants. Now coming to the lawyer part. So what income taxes you will eventually, once you start reading a section, like in words of Palkiwala, I'll tell the number of times you read the section, you will accordingly conclude it in a different manner with a different interpretation. And there might be a situation with a change in the situation, you might interpret a section differently. And the answer, of course, you'll have to convince the court, but is something where the art of interpretation comes into the scene. The task of a lawyer or the lawyer services are required to be engaged in this particular regard. So practically, when it comes to the field of job perspective, so this again is something which I do not suggest there are overshadowing each other. For specifically chartered accountant, we have big four firms like EY, KPMG, PwC, Deloitte. These are foreign firms which have been specifically allowed to practice in India. There are other chartered accountancy firms wherein, of course, again, lawyers are allowed to practice, but they do not intend to, because the main task of a chartered accountancy firm is to do auditing and not to fight case or to interpret the matter. However, when it comes to, again, the law firm perspective, the lawyers are into it. If you see any of the good law firm, they have a dedicated taxation team. Again, there are chamber practices wherein there are senior advocates who again specialize into taxation matter. So I believe there is harmonious dependence upon each other. However, there is also a classification of how a chartered accountant work and how a lawyer work. I hope this helps the question to be answered.
Soumya ma'am also wanted to.
Yeah, I just want to add up a very simple thing. So like I said in the beginning, that in the law school, we have done a lot of computation. So what exactly the chartered accountants do, they help you file the returns. So they know exactly that how that computation has been achieved. Say, for example, as per you, X amount of tax is payable. So it is usually the job of the chartered accountant to reach that X amount of tax. Okay. This is not what we as lawyers do, that we sit and fill the returns of our clients and therefore know that how it has been computed. So I think as regards the facts of the case, as in that why that X amount is payable, it's the job of the chartered accountant. However, like I said that in that example of compensation, whether that compensation should be a part of income or not, that's the part of more of a lawyer. And in fact, like Sumit was also mentioning, that there's a harmonious relationship between the chartered accountant and the lawyers. I think that is totally correct, because even like I told you, the various forums, take for example, Commission of Income Tax Appeals, which is the first appellate authority. When we happen to appear before them, we generally are accompanied by the chartered accountants also, because what we try to convince the Commission of Income Tax Appeals is with the logic that we try to give. But as regards the facts, it's more clear when, I mean, by way of the chartered accountant, because they are the ones who do the filing of returns. They are the ones who do the computation. So I don't think that there is an intersection. In fact, I think that it's better if you work jointly. In fact, even in our own chamber, some time back, we did have chartered accountants working also, because they give you more clear picture as regards the facts of the case. Yeah, so that would be all.
Yeah. Also, I really want to know what made you choose the field of taxation as a career, and what aspects. There are certain factors which contribute you to choose certain fields. So, what were the factors, or what was the aspects that about the field which made it a desirable field for you to pursue a career in?
Right, I'll take this up. For me, why did I choose it is, firstly, I did find it challenging. In the sense, I wouldn't say that other laws are monotonous or anything. I'm not saying that. Each one has different interest. So for me, while I was reading it in college, I found it interesting. And I also saw one thing, that I did not see many people interested in it. I don't know why. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Probably because we just thought that it's all about computation, it's all about calculation, and we don't want to do this. This is a job of the CA. So, but for me, I somehow felt that there was a lot more to explore in this field of law. And also the fact that not many people were interested gave me an idea that probably this would be a field, I wouldn't say where the competition would be less. The competition is a lot more, because you're also involved with another professional in the field. But it is definitely an area where your efforts can be recognized more distinctly and in a more, I would say, quick manner. Of course, it takes time. I'm not saying it happens overnight. In fact, I think to develop an independent taxation firm is in fact more difficult, because the clients take a lot of time to trust you that you will be able to handle such complex matters. But once you start doing it, of course, you develop the aptitude, and that's how, I mean, it just flows. You tend to make that background for yourself, and then it gets easy. And second of all, like I said in the beginning also, Income Tax Act and the other taxation laws are amended yearly, which means that it does not let the law remain monotonous. As in, for example, say there is a section called Section 54 of the Act. In the year 2011-12, it was a different section. Say subsequently in the year 2014, by a Finance Act of 2014, it has been changed. Then that's what I'm trying to say, that the interpretation there onwards from the year 2014 will change. And that's what makes it very interesting for me, that you keep learning new things. You keep getting to know new concepts, new types of levy. I think the way taxation laws get amended, in my opinion, I have not really come across any other laws being amended that quickly, because it also depends a lot on the current economic and financial country situation that is prevailing in the country. So that was my idea, that why did I opt for it. And frankly speaking, I had not really done any tax internship in my law school. So when I graduated, and but I had this thing in my mind that I want to do tax. A lot of people kept asking me that, what is it? Why do we want to do it? But anyway, I just gave it a shot, because I always had this thing in my mind while I was reading the subject in law school, that I want to try what this practice is like. And fortunately, it has worked out well for me, that I'm sticking to this field so far. So yeah, that's my opinion on the subject.
Sumit sir, you have something to add on the
Yes,
subject?
yes. So I belong to a business of family, like a family who is mainly into the businesses. So while I was deciding my future course of action, while I was completing my law school, so eventually back of my mind, I had an idea that I'll be into businesses, and I had no other option. But gradually, I decided to go on and opt for law as a subject. So somewhere back of the mind, since the business idea of the back of my mind was into business, so tax was something which I could relate it to the finest level, because tax help you in understanding the business structure in a better manner, how commercial decisions are required to be taken, how the tax factor can eventually change a merger which is required to be undertaken, let's say in the simple words. So they, like whenever a client or when you read a brief, so before you enter into a taxation prospect of what assuming the argument is, the main idea is to understand the business. What are the basic facts involved in the case? How what are the business decision which led to a certain clarification which is required by the assessing officer? What were the business proposition or the ideas or the agreements which are to be entered into, which may eventually lead to something which can cost you almost 30% of the transaction, which is a taxation rate in India. So I'll just relate, like this was a main idea why I enter into this particular taxation field, and added with the fact I did my internship, and after I graduated, it is going well. So before like this COVID times, I would relate, we were representing a case. It was a national bank we were representing before Delhi High Court. So it was a banking national bank. Uh, so the main argument or the case which dwelled upon on taxation scenario, if you practically see, was something which is against the SSC. However, when we ventured into upon or the idea why the business transaction was entered into, then we eventually get a favorable order from the High Court. So the case, if I may tell you briefly what happened. So dividend income is something which is in reward which you get for holding shares in simple terms. So if you invested in a company, so the reward for the investment which you have made is something something which you get in return as a reward is dividend. So the dividend income in Income Tax Act is not taxable, as simple as that. Any dividend income you earn is not taxable. So to the same intent, what law has done, the expenditure which you incur, assuming you have hired 2-3%, or you have made expenditure of X amount to earn that particular revenue, that particular expenditure which has been incurred is not an allowable expenditure. So was the case all over the India. So to that extent, Act is very much clear. that that particular expenditure will not be allowed in a situation if you are earning an exempt income. So the same was with the banking institution, and the dividend income which were earned by bank went into hundreds of CR. So the one way was to give the taxation. However, the second way was to understand the business, how the banking institution work. So we went to the Banking Regulation Act. We understood the provision, the core provision, what are the actually reason for which the banking institution are required to make investment per se. So we came to the conclusion by interpreting Banking Regulation Act that the amount of shares which has been held by the banking institution is not an investment, but it is something which is held as stock in trade. And it is a requirement as per the RBI regulation, as per CRR rate, SLR rate, which the banks are required to maintain certain percentage of their cash reserve with them. And it is in this light or this obligation of law that one is required to maintain certain amount of shares so as to maintain reserve ratio in terms of the RBI norms. So the argument which we made that the dividend income which we are earning is a matter of fate, but is not something which we intend for. So the expenditure which we are incurring to earn that dividend income is something which should not be taxed, and the amount should be allowed as a expenditure. So like ideas like these help you, like help me in deciding, like understanding how the businesses work. And eventually someone who is into like someone who is good into the corporate law, or someone who love knowing about holding subsidy, about corporate structuring, about reading balance sheet, how, what is the reason of the increasing in the profit rate. If you read newspaper, there are many reasons which come across taxation or the commercial decision which have been impacted. All those, the commercial decision and taxation angle for me go hand by hand. So yeah, I'll ask everybody who is interested in taxation to just give an attempt to understand what basic taxation law are. For me, this was the reason per se.
Okay, so this question related to why to do taxation, but a follow-up question to this: what do you think are the aptitude? Is there a specific kind of aptitude that is needed for a taxation lawyer to aim to have, or are there any specific aptitudes that a taxation lawyer needs to possess to practice taxation? So,
okay. Soumya, should I take it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so see, specifically taxation is a part of a law. The first thing which you are required to be logical enough. So if you see, Income Tax Act is a lengthy and it eventually takes time to understand. Even after 5 years of doing into taxation and working all the time into the field of taxation, there are always new terms which you will eventually come across throughout the life. May it be for any other reason, the enactment of a new act, the basic understanding or the thrill of learning something. However, whenever a new proposition comes, make something to derive a logic out of it. Why this particular section is meant for, and try to always relate that particular logic with the answer, and eventually you will see this is the main intent by which the particular act was enacted. And if you are that logical enough so as to suggest that this was the reason, not of course not legally but logically, if you are well developed enough to understand the intent of enactment of particular act, or the intent of, per se, let's suppose why assessing officer is asking a clarification to me, the intent why X amount of expenditure has to be disallowed or is disallowed, you will eventually be and can be a good taxation lawyer. So again, like if you have interest, like previously I have given example of banking law. The same way, if you have, we have several cases where it's not only the taxation law. So understanding a few section is necessary, which eventually you will grow up section by section wise, reading case law, passages, ITRs. However, if you are assuming good in corporate law, in understanding how the companies are structured, it can be something, a fact to determine or the prerequisite which you think is required for entering into the taxation field. So understanding of accounts, see, is one of the major factor. So I understand, see, the return part is with the chartered accountant. I'm not telling or suggesting a fact that accounts is not at all required, but you are not required to be that into accounts. It's not, the question is not about competency. The question is, what are the basic logic which you need to derive while understanding a simple provision of taxation? So the simple idea is, see, if you haven't done accounting, fair enough. However, if you are have a mind setup that you can do this particular accounting and learn this accounting, not to a threshold level, but of course with a prima facie view to understand something, a situation in a much better manner, go for taxation. It will eventually help you. Might be you might realize taxation is not meant for you. However, tax, according to me, is something which, even though is not to be thought whether it would help me in litigation or I'll be a taxation lawyer, but the knowledge for learning taxation will remain with you across. Thank you.
Soumya ma'am, would you like to?
Yeah, just two things. Like Sumit said, accounting. I do feel that accounting is a bit important part. Though I agree with Sumit that accounting does not mean that you know each and everything. Like, I think accounting is very vast in a subject. We don't mean to say that, but the basics like credit, debit, and those kind of things. Honestly speaking, I am from a PCM background. I had in my 11th, 12th PCM, I had no background of accounting. In the law school also, I did BLLB, so all the art subjects, no accounts subject. So when I came to this profession, when I came to this area of law, I did feel that the knowledge of accounting is a bit needed. And the reason behind that is because you need to understand the facts to be able to apply the law properly. And taxation sometimes requires you to understand that why some accounting entry is done in the manner it is being done, right? So that's when you feel the need that if you have the ability and the reasoning to read financials, to understand accounting, then it does help you get better. But I wouldn't say that anybody who doesn't come from accounting background cannot do this. I don't mean to say that at all. Of course, with time you can learn those things. There are several online platforms from where you can learn the basics. It doesn't take too long. It's not something that can't be done even after law school. So just these two things, that's all.
Now, as Soumya ma'am, you said that taxation is not a static law and it is dynamic. It changes with the changes in situation. So we have a question from Mr. Praveer Srivastava. Thank you, Praveer sir, for asking that question. What are the tax reforms that we require in the COVID situation, and how far will the rate of tax deducted at source and tax collected at source for non-salaried payments bring about better compliance in light of the recent announcement by Finance Minister?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
on a lighter note, before Soumya you answer, like the best way to recourse is to not pay income taxes, like to reduce the slab rate to the extent possible.
No,
Like that's the best what we can
agree
expect from
that.
government at this particular time.
Yeah. So coming to Praveer sir's question, yes, I think the current situation, of course, it was not foreseen by anybody that we would land up in a situation where there would be a complete lockdown. We were expecting to grow our GDP and economy by a larger margin from this year. However, this whole COVID thing has stalled a lot of functioning of a lot of institutions and businesses, which is, of course, undoubtedly going to affect the revenue of the uh, government. All right. So in terms of reforms, I can't really suggest any reform right now, because I think the motive of the government after the current, or during and after the current pandemic, is going to their endeavor is going to collect more and more taxes. And why I say so, because of this current pandemic, they have incurred an extraordinary sort of expenditure. on the health infrastructure, on various other things that people are returning home to ensure that everybody is getting food. So the expenditure is much more what they must have planned, right? So of course, when the expenditure is much more, they have to think of some ways from where they can get revenues to fill up their pockets back, so that of course the other welfare schemes can be laid out and met. When I say that, we cannot ignore the fact that if they suddenly make a rise in the taxation rates, or unreasonable taxation, start doing that, I don't think that's the idea at all, because right now the government is also aware that the businesses are very sensitive. They're at a very sensitive stage, and any rigorous approach of taxation would definitely crumble the whole idea of letting people do their business. So I don't think that they are going to come upon the SSCs directly to collect a lot of taxes, but they will definitely come out with some ways which sort of can balance the interest of the taxpayers and also that of the take care of their own pocket. And to the recent the announcements which were made regarding the deduction of TDS and TCS. So tax deduction at source is when you make a payment, you before making the payment only, at the time of making the payment only, you deduct some amount towards the taxation of that particular income, right? So if I have to make a payment to Sumit, I will make the payment after deducting some tax. Okay. Now that tax, the rate for that tax has been reduced. Say earlier, if it was 7%, it has been reduced by 2.5%, which means now at the time of making any payment to Sumit, I'll be reducing only 7.5% of income, and I'll be depositing it to the government. Now, like I said, that the government will have to find a way out to balance the interest of the taxpayer and also its own interest. That's exactly what the government has tried to do here. The government has not done away with the provision that, okay, you do not need to deduct TDS. The government has just reduced the rates, all right? So that when I am making the receiver, like Sumit in this case, Sumit, when he's receiving money, he's receiving more money. The 2.5% more is in his pockets. And the government is also not clearly doing away with its revenue. The government is also receiving the 7.5% of the money that I'm paying. So that's the whole idea. And I think if I've been able to answer Praveen's question, that's my answer.
Next, I would like to ask a question regarding.
I'll just add something
Yeah,
to
yeah,
what's.
yeah, sure.
You see, Income Tax Act, it's majorly divided into various parts. So there are few sections which actually benefit SSC. There are few provisions which are meant for department and for their own benefit. So to the same, there are few sections which fall within the compliance category, like a time period which suggests a section to suggest a time period when the return has to be filed for company, for individual, a time period when auditing report is required to be submitted, a time period for particularly in the hand of assessing officer when till what time he is required to pass an order. So the action which the government have eventually taken lies in this particular situation, like they have already extended the date of filing of return of income, assuming an assessment order which was required to be passed by this year end, it's automatically extended by the President ordinance. Now coming to the expectation which one have from the government is, I believe, the main issue at this particular time with everyone, be that as it may company, individual, or any businesses, is a liquidity ratio. So any steps which the government take in a manner and not limiting it to a particular class of society per se, any action to reduce the TDS burden, I'm not saying to reduce the tax rate, because it's finally as per the tax rate which you are required to pay to the government and determine your tax liability in the end of the March next year. So at this particular juncture, any step to reduce the taxation rate would eventually help the liquidity crunch which has been done. So what government has done as of now, so they have limited this particular benefit to the class of society. So most of us will be benefited because like the professionals or the sections which have been enacted by the government cover the category of profession so as to give benefit. Earlier, the TDS was deducted at 10%. Now it is reduced to 7.5%. However, the reason to reduce it to only few particular section is something bizarre again. Assuming someone who is working in in-house corporate or someone who is working in any company will again be governed by the same old rate of taxation and will be facing a liquidity crunch. I'm not saying that the extent of benefit which is given is that good enough so as to benefit for the survival of someone. But of course, if something is done, should be done in a manner that it does not restrict to a particular class of society. Now, again, the third category, which like I was thinking about what can be a suggestion which government can, of course, do with. Like if you are knowing the concept of SCZ, these are special economic zone which have been made by government. So what happens, the amount of taxation or the amount of income which you earn while working in this SCZ area are totally exempted. So what during this COVID times, because of a lockdown, everybody is work from home, and even the SCZ are not particularly operational. So the main issue which has been dwelling upon in these SCZ areas are the issues of working from home will eventually give them the benefit of tax exemption of section 10, which has been specifically meant for SCZ per se. So all those notification, even like working from home will not per se make any demarcation policy as in you are working within the boundaries of SCZ or working from your home. Or let's say an amendment to an extent which gives a benefit of an expenditure amount a person is doing for like any hospital or for any donation per se. I'll relate the Modi government, what they have done, they have restricted the benefit of a donation to the central government itself. Like hell, I do not understand the reason behind that. Why I say if someone is assuming planning to make a donation to a particular state government, if again you are restricting it to a particular class of investment being made, if you are giving benefit of a particular expenditure, assuming you are earning 100 rupees and 10 rupees you are donating to central government because of this COVID reason. So for 10 rupees, you will not be required to pay as a tax. That's a simple benefit. However, restricting the 10 rupees benefit only if you are making investment to the central government is, I think, is a bizarre. So like these all situations, extending the threshold limit of these benefit to the state government also would be something which is eventually beneficial to the society per se at large. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. So, as you both of you pointed out that Income Tax Act is a very humongous and huge legislation. So, this question might have arisen in everybody's mind who has dealt with taxation laws as to how does one go about navigating through such a humongous legislation? What is the right approach when it comes to navigating through laws relating to taxation?
Yeah. All right. I'll answer that. So yeah, the income tax is very, very lengthy. And like I said that nobody really expects you to know each and every section by heart, because that's really very difficult to do, because there are certain sections of Income Tax Act which will feel like a chapter in themselves, honestly speaking. All right. So nobody really expects you to do that. But I think my suggestion would be, like if you go by the index of the Income Tax Act, there are divisions. I mean, there are chapter-wise divisions as to how the Income Tax Act has been structured. All right. So suppose you're beginning with the chapter 1, which also includes the section of definition, section 2. It is also, there are numerous definitions inside that one section 2. But how you can go about it is, for example, the first definition comes of advance tax. So while you're reading the definition of advance tax, the definition may be very limited. You may really not really gather a lot of information about it. You may try to find out which are the corresponding sections. And that's not very difficult to see, because once you flip through the index pages, you can see that which chapter deals with specifically with the concept of advance tax. So, for example, if you're reading the definition of advanced tax, you can go back to, you can refer to the chapter which deals with advanced tax to know that what exactly it is and what are the provisions relating to it in the Act. Similarly, regarding the other chapters, like there are chapters on jurisdiction, chapters on assessment, chapters on income tax authority. So I would say that you try to organize it in a manner that, I mean, don't try to learn it from section 1 to section, say, 270. I'm not saying that. Try to make a structure in which you can remember it and also relate it to various provisions. Also, there are sections like section 80 on 80A onwards deals with deductions. Now, those are very specific deduction sections. So, my suggestion would be that if a bare reading of those sections can just justify your reading for now. I mean, reading each and every section in depth would be not possible, but it's okay to just have an idea that, okay, these are the deductions. Section 80C talks about this kind of deduction. Section 80G talks of this kind of deduction. It may not be really possible for you to remember what is the percentage, what is the deadline in each section. That may not be possible, but yeah, to have an overall idea is very important. And that's how I'm suggesting that you go by the index and it helps you. Yeah.
Sumit sir, would you like to add on to as to how
So
we should approach?
yes, like while in law school, I stated earlier, like it's okay you venture the act, but there might be a situation that you might underestimate yourself while going through the entire act per se. Soumya was right to an extent. It's not per se required to go through the entire act and make an understanding whether tax as a subject is meant for you. For me, like the Income Tax Act is primarily divided into two parts. It's the first part is category A that deals with computation provisions. The second part which deals with the procedure norms which are required to be followed while making an appeal, while or either in the hands of assisting officer, the norms of principal natural justice or other procedure norms which the assisting officer is required to govern with. So at this juncture, I'll recommend to just make an idea of understanding few of the computation section, like how the salary income is being computed, what are the sources of income, how is capital gain generated, what are income from other sources. Like these are few 8 to 10 section in first 1075 sections, and again going to the commentary, the intent before why which these particular sections were made in force in India, and all these factor would be a determining factor. The question of procedure, which of course one should give a bare reading to, but is something which you'll eventually grow up and learn while you are into the profession. There's something which you need to appreciate is the on the job training something. So tax per se is wide enough that the concept of on the job training might end up for almost good years. So I'll answer that.
Okay, so
Yes, Tanmay.
yeah, so there is a huge dilemma after students complete their undergraduate studies, and they are often confused as to whether they should opt for masters right away or gain some experience in the field they want to specialize in and then opt for postgraduate studies. Could you guide as to what is the correct approach, whether to go for masters directly or gain some experience and then go for postgraduate studies?
So see, practically this idea of going for LLM might differ from person to person. Like considering if we are today dwelling upon the field of taxation, which I agree to most of you, like most of you always are agree with the fact that taxation law per se is not particularly taught in law school. So I'm not commenting upon like other field of area, be that as it may, general commercial law or any field of LLM. Today, since the topic is taxation, so specifically considering since you haven't dwelled upon that particular topic in that depth, it's always a good idea to read something when you are into practice of that particular field. So by that time, the confusion either to join the taxation as a profession, as a long-term profession, will also be resolved there might be a situation like after graduation, you go for LLM, and after LLM, there are no, like, there might be a situation that you are not more into taxation, or there are some issues which eventually there might be, and you will appreciate that. So the point which I am making is, take a break for almost 2 or 3 years and be into litigation or advisory, as the case may be. Think about the fact whether tax is meant for you, and then eventually dwell upon the idea of going for LLM. So, like right now, I'm also pursuing LLM. I'm doing it in the field of commercial field, wherein the main subject are banking law, merger and acquisitions. So the idea for me for not going into the taxation specifically was, it's okay because I'm into taxation field. The process of learning is going on. However, the as the fact which I mentioned earlier, the idea of learning other subjects which help you eventually grow up as a taxation lawyer, which I thought will be required, and I am accordingly pursuing LLM in commercial law. That's it.
Soumya ma'am, would you like to add on?
Yeah, very small thing. Like Sumit is mentioning about his own LLM. I think the idea to do LLM in a different subject than what you are pursuing may also help you to understand the interplay between the laws, right? For example, he mentioned that he's doing it in commercial laws, banking laws. So he will be reading those laws, and there could be a situation where he will be able to apply the principles that he's learned in the practice here, or he'll be able to apply those principles that he'll be learning in the during the course of his LLM while he's practicing the taxation, because these are very interrelated laws. I mean, in terms of dependency on each other, it's a lot. So I think that can help. And as regards doing an LLM in the field of taxation itself, I think of course, as a professional, you will learn more, but I won't say that it is a necessity for somebody who's into litigation or even in advisory. I won't say it is a necessary, but I don't think anybody can deny the fact that if you do a master's, it will enhance your knowledge and will do better only. But I won't count it as a necessity. That's all.
Thank you, Soumya ma'am. Thank you so much, sir. Now I think I will open the floor for questions if someone has. Okay, I read out some questions from the chat box. So here's a question from Arpita. I'm looking forward to have a career in indirect taxation, and I have been associated with a well-known taxation firm for almost a year now. What would be your suggestion of firms for someone seeking a job in indirect taxation at the present time?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Arpit, you want to go for it?
So, like, I would not suggest this would be the correct forum to suggest the names of the firm particularly. Like, it would be prejudicial to interest of someone. So, of course, Arpita can connect, or we can connect after the conference, and would suggest, like, if these are the specific questions, I guess these are not meant to be answered in this forum, and like restricting or benefiting it to someone. So we can help after this conference is over.
To that, I would just say that, not commenting on which firm she's associated with. Generally, I would say that if Arpita, you have been able to see yourself growing there, in the sense that if you think that you have been able to gain some exposure, you are getting adequate amount of new learning, not each day, but yeah, at a good interval of times, then I think, of course, you can try for a job there. And as regards the current times, I would just say that we all can just think of a way that right now there is there's not so much of movement in terms of job, but I would just say this is all very temporary. Nothing is going to stop. It's all suspended for some time. It may be suspended for some time, but I wouldn't say that there would be no scope or anything like that. Things will move, things will regain its space. So I don't think anybody should worry in that regard. It's just that things may take a bit more time. So that's all.
Okay, so we have one question from Shreya. If you could answer it briefly, as to litigation in general is perceived to be less remunerating. Is that the case with tax litigation as well? It's a question from Shreya.
All right. Again, I would not want to create any kind of prejudices for any sort of workplace. The notion is generally that, but I think in terms of growth, it doesn't take too long for you to grow also. I mean, you may start with little, and I think there is a reasoning behind it, which may or may not be justified, because initially you do not have the adequate amount of exposure. You do not really, I mean, you cannot be interested with complete authority and responsibility. So in that manner, I think the employers or the ones you work with, they also have this notion in the head that they are in fact teaching you, which is, I think, correct also. And therefore, I think it's okay to start if you have interest, and if you can sustain in that kind of money, try to take it up and start it up, because if you are interested, you will definitely, your work will get recognized. It will take some time, but with patience you can achieve it. Your work will get recognized, and with time your remuneration will increase too. I mean, there's no point in making a comparison, because uh, I don't think that's how it goes, because you can't compare your interest with others. If litigation interests you, then it is you who has to find a way as to how you can work out in that kind of money, right? I mean, I have friends who started with tier 1 firms, and I went for litigation, but our area of interests were different. So for me to sit back and compare my pay and anything else, perks of being of their job, I don't think that's a very ideal situation, because I did as per what my interest was, and therefore I decided to pursue it. So that's what you should do too. The money can come sooner or later, but your interest is very important.
Sumit sir, would you like to add on? Or...
I agree, totally agree with Soumya.
Okay, thank you so much, Sumit sir. Thank you so much, Soumya ma'am, for such a perceptive and insightful session. I would like to make a quick announcement here that we have shared the link to e-certificate, Google form link for the e-certificate in the chat box. Please do not forget to fill out before you do. Thank you so much, Soumya ma'am. Thank you so much, Sumit sir, for taking out your time and coming here for this webinar. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much, Tanmay.